Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I work at the AT&T's fiber optic cable plant as part of Network Systems, and that's up in Norcross, Georgia. And what I do, I'm a financial analyst. I do financial analysis on any type of projects that we might want to undertake, or even things that we're currently doing to see if we want to stay in, we're making money, things like that. Before that, I've been in that job about a year. Before that, I was a computer engineer there at that location. Hobbies, I enjoy playing sports, any type of sport, and I also am real active in our singles group in my church, and so I enjoy my friends up there, and so we do all kinds of fun things together. Speaking experience, I have no formal speaking experience. I haven't given any formal presentations, and one of the things that I want to get out of this class in the next 3 days is I want to be more, I feel more, what shall I say, at ease when I do give presentations, or sometimes I've had the opportunity to give the results of my findings from these financial studies or whatever, and I'd like to be more at ease when I do give those. I'd like to take this opportunity to give you some directions on some 10 easy steps that may help you when you might go visit someone in their home. Sometimes we think that this might be another frightening thing, just like getting up and speaking in front of a group. And these 10 steps will help make your visit a very pleasant and enjoyable one. The first thing you need to know is, what is your objective in going? First of all, you'll probably be visiting for maybe a club, or you might be trying to sell something in the home, or maybe you'll be visiting for a church group. So first of all, you need to know why you're going to visit. And just for sake of example, I'm going to take the example of someone coming to visit your church on Sunday, and then maybe sometime during that week, maybe you talked to them during the service and told them that you'd like to come visit with them during the week just to get to know them. So we're going to take that as the sake of example. So our second step is you need to know where you're going, because very oftentimes you know the address or whatever, and if you don't take the time to look at a map or just to make sure you know where you're going, you might get lost in the process. So we need to know where we're going. Sometimes you might like to call ahead if you're going considerable distance out of your way, so you won't get out there 30, 40 minutes from your home and then no one's there. So if you're having someone, many times you'll have someone go with you to the home that you're visiting. The third step is you don't want to drive wildly, because if the partner that's going with you, you want to put them at ease, so you just want to get there. You want to get there in the number of pieces you left, your car, you and your partner. So you want to take your time and drive at a leisurely pace. The fourth thing is, upon arriving at the home, many people don't realize about parking. You want to park on the street, and a lot of people will park in the driveway, and you don't want to do that for a couple of simple reasons. The first is if you're in the home visiting with people and they have someone else that lives there is driving in, you don't want to be blocking them from getting in their carport or their garage. And another reason is someone might be leaving. And the third reason that you don't want to park in someone's driveway is because you might be at the wrong house. The address might be the next house over, and then you got to get back in your car and drive out of the driveway. So the fourth step, as we said, you need to park on the street. Now the fifth thing is you want to go to the front door, not to the back door, because this is the first time you probably visited with these folks and you don't really know them that well. And as you're walking to the door, you don't want to go looking at all the windows. I mean, looking in the windows, because you never know what you might see, especially if they weren't expecting you. And as you go to the front door, you want to ring the front door. And what I usually like to do is stick my ear up close to the door, so when you ring it, you know if it rings or not. Because many times if you ring the doorbell, houses a lot of times have doorbells that don't ring inside. And if no one comes, you might decide, if there's not a doorbell too, you might just knock. And you want to knock firmly. You want to, not like you're trying to beat the door down, or not like you're trying to barely wake up a mouse or something. You want to give it a firm knock that lets them know that you're comfortable about coming and you want to see them. And then another part of the fifth step about being at the front door, you want to stand back away from the door. Give them a few feet once you knock on the door, in front of the door, so when they do open the door, you're not in their space. And also, a lot of people have peepholes, and you want to give them time to see it, because if you're right up there, your head will be real big, see? And also, if you're visiting with like if I was visiting and there was a lady friend of mine visiting with me, I would usually put her right in front of the peephole, about a few feet away, so when they come to the door, they see a pleasant little lady smile, not my smile. So, just some things to consider, especially if there's a lady greeting at the door. She would be more apt to open the door if there was a lady with her. The sixth thing is your greeting. When they do see you, and while you're waiting there, you want to have a nice smile, and you want to look pleasant and everything, but when they open the door, you want to smile and you want to introduce yourself. Tell them who you are, where you're from. So if you're visiting from a church, you tell them that, or you're visiting from some club or organization or whatever, then they know who you are and where you're from. And you'd like to tell them why you're there. It might be that, we're visiting, I met you Sunday morning at church, and I just wanted to come by and say we're glad you came, and just to get to know you a little bit. And so the sixth thing was a greeting, and that's real important, because that's their first impression of you since they last saw you. The seventh thing, if they weren't there, then what you'll do is you might leave a door knocker on the door, or you just go back to your car and maybe write them a card and mail it to them and tell them that you came by and visited with them and they weren't home. But if they were there and they invite you in, some people might invite you in, some people might not, but if they do, take the time to go in for a few minutes and just visit with them. You might notice as you're walking in like pictures or things that you can see that they probably take some of their time and their hobbies, and then you can ask them questions, and that way you're starting to build a relationship there. So after you've spent the time with them and kind of got to know them a little bit, and you feel like you've spent enough time, you don't want to sit in there and spend 30, 40 minutes. You just want to make a good short visit and let them know that you care about them. If they've got a TV going or all these other distractions that might be happening in a house, a baby crying or whatever, you just want to keep those to a minimum. And even if the TV's on, and sometimes they might not care anything about it, and you don't want to be too forward and say, well, you turn your TV off, but just to spend some time, some quality time with them. As you're leaving, you want to shake their hands and tell them you're glad of the time that you were allowed to spend with them, and that you hope you'll see them back at your church, or if you were inviting them to a club or organization, that you hope that they'll come. And as you leave the home, don't sprint back to your car. Because they pick up the message that they want to get out of here, or they didn't have a good time, or they're in such a hurry that they don't really care. They stop by just to act like they care. And as you're leaving, you're on your way back home. Once you get back to wherever you are, write down some notes. That way it'll be a memory jogger maybe in a couple of months, that who they were, some things they like to do. Because if they had interest, or they went to a certain school, and you know someone else in your organization that went to that same school, you might relay that information on to them, and so later on in another date, that another person that has more things in common with them can make a contact. And the last thing is to stay in touch. And if you tell them that you'll call them back in a month or whatever, or they want you to do that, then take the time to stay in touch with them. I hope that these 10 easy points have helped let you know some things that maybe make visiting in someone's home not as frightening or a scary situation. So thank you. Are there any questions? No, good.
You can cover the dog.
Yeah, shoot the dog.
When your eyes are bouncing around, you're bouncing around too. So maybe that's really good.
Want me to get you some water?
I won't be hurting today.
Here, go put some in this, you'll feel great.
That stuff is awful.
I-
Yeah. Hi, my name is Jay French, and I'd like to take this opportunity to tell you what I like about myself. There's a couple of things that we need to start with to begin with. The first is I think I'm a very positive person. Whatever thing I'm doing, I like to go about it with a positive attitude. I like to take the time in sports or my work or my job, whatever the situation is, and try to look on things in a positive attitude. One example that I can use about that is my father. My father and I, when we were growing up, we used to play sports together all the time. And we had a good time doing it. And one thing I began to notice about him was a lot of times he worried about things when he really couldn't control it. We'd be out in the yard or something and something would go wrong in the neighborhood. And all of a sudden, he would be worried about something he had no control over. So if we didn't have any control over it, then I don't see any point in worrying. So I always try to be as positive as I can. Another thing I like to do is I'm committed to the things that I set out to do. I've set many goals in my life, and during the time when I've set them, I'll be committed to that thing, whether it's school, my task at work, or whatever. And I've got to walk over there. I've got to be committed to walking right over there. Another thing I like to do, that's my commitment. Another thing I like to do is I like to play sports. I really enjoy, as I've said before, I grew up playing sports. And in high school, the thing I like to do, the sport I ran was track. I ran track, and one thing I got out of track was the things we talked about being committed and about setting your goals on certain things. And the event I was in was the 440. If you're not familiar with that, that's you have to run all the way around the track. And so that's where I learned a lot of these things.
It's wonderful. You tried to trick us.
Great. Very humorous.
There was no fix.
8, 6.
5 to
Got
8,
your
let's say 5 to 8.
5
Yeah.
and
That's a long.
8. Sure is.
Especially when we have
However-
baseball again.
however-
Yeah. No, we have to-
It's longer the second time, right?
The problem is everyone has information.
Taking yours down.
See now? Good. Because I'm not walking now. You ready?
Just do the 440 before you begin and you cover it all.
Hi, my name is Jay French, and I'm going to take this opportunity today to tell you some steps on how you can go about making a presentation. Some things you need to do before you actually make your presentation. As we all know, making a presentation is probably one of the most feared things a lot of us will ever do. So there's 6 basic steps that you need to go through before you actually make the presentation. A lot of people will just kind of get up and wing it on the day that they make a presentation, but we're not going to do that. So we're going to go through these 6 basic steps. The first step is to establish some of the objectives, and this is probably the most important step of all. And the reason for that is if, let's say, we'll take an example besides speaking. Let's say we're going out to visit someone. If we don't know where we're going, then there's no way we're going to get there. So we have to know that we're going to visit someone, and that would be our objective. So in a speech, when you're preparing, you need to establish your objectives. The second thing you need to do is you need to analyze your audience. So if we were going to visit someone, we would need to know where we're going. We need to know who we were going. So the same thing applies to making a presentation. You need to analyze your audience. Who are you going to be speaking to? What are their needs? What will they be listening for? Our third thing is you need to make a preliminary plan. You need to kind of have a roadmap. You need to lay out what you think you might want to talk about. All right, and the fourth thing is our resource material. You need to basically gather some information that you might be using so you have a feel for the information to be used. The fifth one is you need to go out and get the information. You need to organize the information so you know you have some background information to pull from. And the sixth one is to practice and evaluate yourself. You might want to videotape yourself, as sometimes we do, like in classes and things like that. So we need to practice and we need to evaluate. And it's good to have people listening to you as you practice, so that they can give you positive and negative feedback. More positive than negative. So we're going to go into detail on each one of these points, and I'm going to be covering the first three, and we have a fine young lady that's going to be covering the last three, and so you'll hear from Joan a little later in the presentation. The first step is establish your objectives. As we talked about, this is the most critical area in making a presentation and preparing for your presentation, is to establish your objectives. You need to know why you're making this, who you're going to be making it to. And your objectives of your talk, your presentation, may be different, and they usually are different from the overall scope of your presentation. Let's take, for instance, a football team. A football team before a game has gone through their preparation all week, and they're in the locker room. They're getting ready to come out to take the field. And the overall result of this team is they probably want to have the best record they can that year, or they might want to win this game. Well, the coach at the beginning of the game, he's already gone through all the preparation all week. He's taught his team everything he wants to teach them. But he wants to get them pumped up or motivated for the first initial series in the game, get them excited about the game. And so he's going to give them a speech that's going to motivate them. So his objective in his talk is not to win the rest of the season or all the games that year or even that game. It's to get them motivated to go out there and play. So we need to realize that our objectives for our talk may be different from the whole objective of the organization or whatever. All right, so we've covered the objectives. Four parts of that are the scope. You need to realize when you're preparing, do you have time to prepare? Do you have you don't want to take on this great speech or whatever, or if you were given some research project, if you didn't have time to go in and prepare, you want to tone it down to where you have time to prepare. The second thing is the audience knowledge. You need to take into account what they know. You don't want to go into just say a elementary school and talk about a mainframe computer and on its bits and bytes and how it transfers information, because they won't be able to understand or to take in that knowledge. The third thing is the ability to act of that audience. Does that audience have enough power, or can they do anything about it? If you wanted to, let's take that football situation for instance. If they wanted to go out and win that game, the cheerleaders, they might have some influence in the game to get the crowd riled up. So the coach might go to them and say, we need y'all to help inspire the crowd. But he's not going to go to the cheerleaders and say, you need to work on the blocking and tackling, because they don't have any ability to act in that situation. And the last thing is, can we accomplish what you want to talk about? You don't want to give a speech that there's no way that you can accomplish. There's like take elementary schools. I mean, if there was a lot of those people that like to backpack or what have you, you don't want to go talk to them and give them a speech about climbing Mount Everest, because they won't be able to go climb Mount Everest. They just won't have the ability to do it. So there's different objectives, and you might have primary and specific objectives or secondary objectives. There are a lot of objectives that you might want to meet in your talk, but you need to establish some objectives. The second step that we talked about was you need to analyze your audience. So that's our second step. And there's a little acronym that you can make out of Audience Analysis Audit, AAA, and that's what we're going to talk about. The step one of that, it will help you analyze your audience, is your objectives, and we just talked about that in step one on the previous page. The second thing is to look at your audience in general terms. Who are you going to be speaking to? Like if in this audience we have a whole wide variety of different occupations within one company. We all have some general things in common, like we work for the same company, but there's a lot of other things that are different. So we need to look at our audience in general terms. Maybe they're all female, all male. They're all single, or maybe they're all married, or what have you. And then you can look at an audience in specific terms. Once you get down, what do we have in common? Why are all these people here? For instance, here we're here for a class. We're here to learn more about making presentations. So specifically, that's what we have in common here. We all have the same goals of getting something out of this class. And when you're analyzing your audience, you want to look at it in the sense of presenting your material with appropriate information and techniques. You don't want to go into a group and give them information that will offend them in any way, or present it in any way that will offend them. So you wouldn't want to tell an off-color joke or things like that in any situation. So you wouldn't also want to tell information that was over their head, as we've talked about before. So that's our second step, analyzing your audience. Our third step is you need to prepare a preliminary plan. And this kind of goes along with our objectives that we talked about in the first step. But you want to kind of lay out, what basically the route that you want to travel. Like if we were going to visit someone, you want to know, where you're going, but you need to know basically how you're going to get there. The research center will come later, you go in and find out what exactly how to get there. Our preliminary plan tells the direction to take. And also the parameters to pick up. So we go out and we gather information. So if we've got people helping us on our presenting our speech, we have people out there gathering information and putting it together for us. We need to let them know, we're speaking to this group of people. We want to emphasize this, so they know when they're going out that they are going to be talking or speaking about certain things, so they can help you and decipher the information. And those are the first the steps that we've used, and there's going to be 3 more, the 4th, 5th, and the 6th step that will help us in getting ready for our presentation. So I thank you for your time, and I hope this has helped you, maybe in preparation for you doing a speech. Thank you.
Any questions?
Great.
Good morning. I'd like to take this opportunity to tell you how much I appreciate y'all having me here this morning to speak to y'all. It puts you on a very anxious situation when you're asked to speak to the Professional Speakers Association, and so we'll just try to do as well as we can this morning. I was asked to speak by Don this morning about a memorable situation I had, and so I decided to speak about my wedding night. But since I'm not married, I can't tell you about that. Then I decided, well, maybe I'll tell them about going to visit the president at the White House. That would have been a memorable situation, but that never happened either. So I'm relegated to speak about a situation that happened my junior year in high school. My junior year in high school, I was running cross country. We had a very good cross country team. In fact, we were ranked number 1 in the state. And we ended up winning the state meet that year, and that was a very memorable situation in my life. I was in the best shape of my life, and our team, we had about 20 guys that ran together, and we enjoyed each other's company a whole lot. That spring, I had decided that I would either be running outdoor track or I would be playing baseball. And I decided my situation, I was going to either play one of those sports, depending on how our track team did during the indoor season. We had 2 indoor track meets that year. The first one was going to be at the end of January, and we also had an invitational track meet 2 weeks before that we were going to be participating in. And I decided that how our team did during those 2 meets was going to determine what I did that spring. Well, our invitational track meet, which was the 2nd week of January, was coming up, and our team was training, we were all getting in real good shape. We had a real good team. A lot of the guys from our cross-country team were running on the team, so we were really getting ready for the meet. And our coach decided that he would place me on 2 relay teams at our invitational track meet. The first one would be the 2-mile relay, which was the first event of that track meet. And the second one was the mile relay, which was the last event of the track meet. And as we all know, the mile relay is when 4 people each run one time around the track. So that was the event I was really looking forward to. Our 2-mile relay team was ranked number 1 in the state, and we ended up winning that event there at the invitational track meet, and we had a good time with it. But after the event, I started to get sick. I started feeling fever, and then I would go from cold to hot, and I didn't really understand what was going on. It was really starting to worry me because our mile relay team, we were going to have to compete the next day. And so I was trying to stay well as I could. I was wrapped up. I would get all these coats on because I was cold, and then I'd get hot. And so the next day, as my event drew closer to me, it looked like I wouldn't be able to compete. And our teammates were kind of down about it. But then we had another guy fill in because I couldn't compete. And my coach decided it'd be best if I rested and got ready for the state meet in 2 weeks. So that was real hard on me because our team, we had the best team in the state, and I wasn't able to compete. But the thing that later, after our team did win that event even without me, so it just showed that they didn't need me. But the next week, I seemed to get worse and worse. And so for the next few days, I wasn't seeming to get any better. So by Tuesday of the next week, I decided to go to the doctor. My parents took me to the doctor. He said, you just have the ordinary flu. You just stay in bed, rest up, drink a lot of fluids, same old thing, give you some antibiotics. And same thing that I'm doing right now because I'm a little under the weather. But it seemed by Thursday and Friday, I still wasn't getting better, and my condition was getting worse. And my dad, as I've already told you before, he liked to worry a lot. And this was something he thought he could do something about, so he would call the doctor. I don't know how many times he called the doctor. He probably called the doctor 10 times and said, his condition's getting worse, he's got these symptoms and this. And he said, no, it's just the flu, so don't worry about it. Well, by Saturday morning, I was in such bad shape, I didn't know really where I was. I couldn't breathe hardly. Couldn't do anything for myself. Couldn't get up to go to the restroom or anything. And my dad, by that time, he was fed up with the doctor. So my dad was going to be the doctor. But what he did, he had a real good friend. And we lived in Auburn at the time. And my dad had a good friend who was the head of the veterinary school at Auburn. And this man, Auburn has one of the best vet schools in the country, and this man, my dad called him, and his good friend, he says, I want you to come over. He said, I need your help. He said, okay, I'll be over. So he comes over, and sure enough, my dad has him look at me.
Were you biking?
You think that might be a little strange, but vets, they do probably know a good bit about medicine. So he came, he said, you need to get him to the hospital. He said, he is really bad off. And see, I didn't hardly even know he was in the room, much less what was going on. So my dad called my doctor and said, I'm taking him to the hospital, I don't care what you say. And so the doctor said, meet me at my office on the way. And because it is on the way. So he took one look at me once we got there, and he said, yes, he needs to get there. Once I got there, they carried me in, and they had an internal medicine doctor there, and he said, they did some quick tests, and they said, we've got to drain his lungs. He's got fluid all throughout his abdomen, and we've got to get it out because he can't breathe and he's in really bad shape. So that's what they did. They opened me up, put this tube in me, and sure enough, they had this big glass jar down on the floor. It probably hold a gallon. And if you think you've seen a rainbow, you've never seen all the colors that were in that jar. It filled up in no time. They put another jar down there, and it kept draining for the next 2 weeks while I was in there. It was a real hard situation because that weekend between the 2 track meets that our church group was going on a retreat. That was our big event for the year. And I wasn't able to go. None of the people, they left on Friday, so nobody knew I was in the hospital. And a lot of my track friends, they came up there. I'm going, don't worry, I'll be ready next week. I'll be on the track, on the track training. We'll be ready for the state meet. Little did I know what shape I was in. So I wasn't able to attend. But this story, I just wanted to relay this to you because it meant something in my life at that time for 3 reasons. There was 3 real things I learned from this. Number 1 was I learned that I need to rely on people more. At that time, I was so independent. I wanted to do things my way. I could always do things that I wanted to do. And at that time, if I didn't have those people that I relied on to help me, the doctors, the nurses, the friends, my family, then I wouldn't be here today. The second thing is I needed to realize that I needed to care for people more. And when people get sick now, I try to go see them in the hospital because that was my best medicine. No medicine they gave me was as good as the medicine the people that came and spoke to me and told me how much they cared about me and that hope I got better. The third thing that it taught me was commitment. When I finally did get out of the hospital 2 weeks later, it was a long road back because I was thinking, I'll get out of the hospital, I'll be brought down to school, be running on the track or playing baseball or whatever. Well, it was a real humbling experience because when I came back, I could do nothing. I could barely walk, much less do anything else. I lost down to 122 pounds, so I was really frail. And the coaches were real good to me because they said that my baseball coach said, well, you can come on out, and work your way back into shape, and when you're in condition, you can dress for the team and stuff. And I said, well, I appreciate that. So I went out and worked out, and they'd hit me fly balls, and I'd try to run, and I'd fall down. And so I about decided that, it was time for me to step aside, and I said, well, I'm not going to be able to help the baseball team this year, so I'll try to go out and run on the track just to get back in shape, get back in the condition that I was. So that's what I did. And that was even worse than the baseball situation because now here I was out on the track trying to get in shape, trying to get all this fluid out of my lungs that had built up in there. And I was running not the high school guys workout, not the high school girls workout, not the junior high guys workout, but not even the junior high girls team. And they were all beating me around the track, so that was real tough on me. But I started to get in shape, and as the year turned out, I ended up going out for the tennis team, which was 0-24 the last 2 years, and we had a real successful year. But it just taught me that I could come back, with consistent training, that I could overcome the things that, even when I felt down, because all these people around me were doing things that I used to do, and I couldn't do it. So the 3 things I really learned was being committed to what I was trying to do, get back in shape, get back to where I was, relying on people and caring about people. I enjoyed the time that I got to spend with you this morning, and I hope maybe you're going through a situation now that maybe this example of my life could help you, or maybe in the future that you'll go through something that you can draw from this on. And appreciate the time with y'all, and thank you.
I only have one thing that possibly you don't have to get married to experience.
Yeah.
I've had 2 honeymoons. They were kind of running hot and cold too.
When he said he was going to talk about his wedding night, I thought, boy, this is going to get interesting.
Jay, did they ever find out what's wrong with you?
Oh, I had pneumonia. I had this rare. Well, they ran all these tests and they couldn't find it for like 2 days, and finally they said that I had pneumonia, and it was some weird type of pneumonia that.
The Dotsons get.
Yeah.
It always
They said that most doctors will go through their whole practice and never see the type of pneumonia I had, so I don't know how I got it.
You don't know how you got it?
Well, I just kept getting worse and worse. It's terrible.
You're so fortunate.
Oh, What'd your doctor
It was a great
say?
experience.
Well, we never went back. My dad never went back to that doctor. Just say
Can't blame him.
he was really distraught because he really did nothing. It was the internal medicine guy that really helped out a lot because he was the one that doctored me while I was in the hospital and stuff, and so we never went back to the first guy.
He's got a good bed.
Yeah.
Whoever you are you an atheist? Are you an agnostic? Are you another religion? Are you nothing? Listen, you're changing. You are changing. You will change. This morning, to the last person, may our hands go up from our heart and say, God, I'm going to become a believer in you. Jesus.